Hey everyone, welcome to D20 Woodworking. Today we are talking about the Sinister Motives expansion box for Marvel Champions. Now I'm not going to go crazy in depth with everything here. I'm going to give a pretty light overview of everything and just kind of my recommendations with the box, just some general thoughts, and if I was buying this series from scratch, kind of where this would fit in. So I guess first we'll break down the heroes first a little bit, and then we'll go into the villains after that. So the first hero I want to cover is Gwen Stacy, or aka Ghost Spider. This was the hero I was probably most excited for personally. I really liked her cards. Just reading through when they were first announced, I thought she was able to do pretty interesting things. I thought she was fairly well balanced. She came with a protection deck build. Out of the box was really solid. It was well done in my opinion. I will say that it's kind of hard to really use her in other situations. I tried to adjust this deck with her, and it wasn't bad, and it works just fine. But I still feel like protection just makes the most sense with her. Um, Aggression again, it was fine, but once again, it kind of kept coming back to protection. Just kept making the most sense with her. It really felt like she was meant for that kind of deck, which has me a little worried about long-term use with her. Now, again, I don't want to make it seem like you can't do aggression with her, you can't do justice, you can't do leadership. You absolutely can. It just feels like a weaker version than what protection can do. So I worry a little bit of how that's going to be in the future with her, that if I'm going to get bored of playing her because I'm just going to be bored of playing protection over and over. So we'll see in the future how that goes. One thing that is interesting to note, I will say, is Ticket to the Multiverse. I really thought that card was going to be used more because I really like the idea of that card, but I think I played it once, maybe twice, and I didn't really use it. It was kind of weird. It seemed to be one of the standout cards of the box. Didn't really use it a ton, but I will say her web bracelets are fantastic. Really love those cards. Phantom Flip was great. Ghost Kick was great. And Pure and Punch was pretty good. Web Binding was one of those cards I just didn't use a ton. George Stacy, your entire bad card for her, the Worried Father obligation is kind of built around that card. And I get why George Stacy's there, and I get that he could work pretty well. I just almost never wanted to take the risk. It was a little weird. It was a little weird for me because I knew that if I put all the cards underneath him and I got an obligation, I would lose all those cards, and it almost never felt like it was necessary or really worth it. Now again, that's not to say that you follow the same path as I do, right? Just saying, when I played, I used them a couple times and I would try to use them pretty quick. I didn't use them for long-term storage for my cards. So overall, I'm still really happy with Ghost Spider. I still think she's a fantastic hero, a great hero for the collection, and I'm excited to use her more. I'm not gonna lie. It's not gonna stop with just this few playthroughs, a handful of playthroughs. I'm gonna keep using her in the future. I think she's a great addition and a great hero overall. Next up, we have Spider-Man, Miles Morales, and this was the hero that I think most people are pretty excited about. And I'm not gonna lie, he's good. He's really good. He's really well built overall. It's kind of funny because one of the interesting side effects, one of the interesting things that really came from him is you have cards like Arachnobatics, right? It's a 1-cost event card where you deal 2 damage to an enemy. If the enemy has stun status on it, deal additional 3. If the enemy has confused status on it, deal an additional 3 damage. What's interesting about this is because of how the steady keyword works on villains, he can actually be insanely powerful. If you don't go out there and stun a villain, or if you do 1 stun card of the 2 for steady, right, and 1 confuse of the 2 that is needed to confuse a steady villain, this card will constantly swing for 8. A 1-cost 8 card is absolutely huge. Honestly, it's kind of insane. It's an insane card. Sure, it takes a little bit work to build out, but if you never care about truly stunning and confusing an enemy completely, he can swing for 8 constantly. So steady is kind of a keyword that really helps him out. Now again, if you just stun a villain, if you just confuse the villain, still works out in your favor, but they're probably going to clear that next round. If you spend time doing it on a steady villain, it really works out well. Miles overall is absolutely fantastic. I mean, he's well built completely. So for example, Double Life, I know that was a card early on. People were like, I was kind of iffy about it. It's a great card. I mean, absolutely fantastic card. Works really well. Anytime you can change your form so that you manually change down to Miles Morales, you can heal up and then use that card, right, to come back up as a as Spider-Man and be ready. I mean, because it's not a hero action card, which was to me is what makes it really really good. Some of his other cards, Swing In, normal threat reduction, works pretty darn well. Same with Web Shot is a normal damage card, works well. They kind of tee off of Spider-Man's main card of the basically do 2 damage and stun that enemy. You know, it gives Spider-Man a tough status card. You know, it's overall well done deck. Web Shooter, you know, we've seen in the original Spider-Man, works great. My one slight pet peeve is the same artwork is used. I wish they would have used slightly different artwork for Web Shooter. That would have been nice. But I mean that's nitpicking, right? Right. But overall, it's good. I mean, he's extremely solid. He's extremely well built. His pre-con deck, I wasn't the biggest fan of because they're trying to mesh him and like a shield deck build together. And I think if you kept them separate, it works a lot. It makes a lot more sense. When I played Miles as, you know, pure spider web warrior deck, absolutely fantastic. The deck works great. He's a fantastic hero. And then I would separately build a shield deck on top of that, or not on top of that, also. And those decks work great. So the cards in his pre-con deck are really good. I just don't like them together per se. But it's absolutely fantastic. And look, if we're just looking at this box from just a hero perspective, this is probably the best box for 2 heroes, right? So you have Red Skull that has, you know, Hawkeye and Spider-Woman. Great heroes. Yeah, pretty good. Hawkeye has some weaknesses, I would say. But Spider-Woman is absolutely fantastic. So you get a high tier hero and kind of like a mid tier. You know, with Groot and Rocket, they're both pretty good. They're not fantastic, but they're both solid overall all around. Then you had Warlock and Spectrum. Warlock's really, really good. Spectrum's good. It just seems like she got kind of boring fast, which is a whole nother video that I think be interesting to do at some point. But both these heroes, I think, are top tier heroes. I think you can argue that, you know, if you were to rank out the heroes and try to be as objective as possible, they would both definitely be top 10, maybe top 5. They're both very, very strong heroes. So as far as this box from that perspective, with just getting them for heroes, I mean, top notch. You can't go wrong. They're absolutely fantastic heroes. All right, next we're going to go into all the villains. But if you made this far in the video, do me a huge favor. Scroll down a little bit, hit the like button, hit subscribe, leave a comment. I want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear your thoughts about the villains of this box. I want to hear your thoughts about the heroes. You know, what did you like? What didn't you like? You know, we can have a more in-depth conversation in there, especially with different things that you all want to point out. But if you could subscribe, like the video, you know, it really helps me out, helps the channel out, and I greatly appreciate it. So with that being said, let us dive right down into the villains, and we'll start with the very first villain, which is Sandman. I think Sandman is pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie. When I first saw that he does indirect damage instead of direct damage. Now this is only for Sandman 1 and 2, right? What's interesting is when you get to Sandman stage 3, he starts doing direct damage, but it's all, what is it? Overkill, or he gains overkill, right? Which makes it more interesting in the sense that now you can actually use your allies to block, but there's punishment to that. But I like the idea. I like the whole sand counter setup. I think it's pretty neat. Once you kind of figure it out, of, you know, kind of focusing on keeping sand counters down, because basically the sand clones become nothing afterwards. You don't really have to worry about them. Once you kind of figure that out, it's not so bad. It really isn't. Protection seems to work really well against him. I feel like threat generally wasn't too much I had to worry about with Sandman. I will say that, you know, he goes through his deck pretty fast, so you have to prepare for that. You have to prepare for the indirect damage, you know, all those different things. But I think for a first villain in a expansion box, I think he was fantastic. I mean, I couldn't really ask for much better. I think he's one of the better first villains, right? Usually they're quote unquote the easiest. This one I think was the least straightforward out of them, and not in like an overly complicated, difficult way. It was just you had to think through the problem a little bit, right? You had to work through Sandman, and I thought that was pretty interesting. I thought it was good. I liked him, or I like him a lot. I think he's good. I think he's fun. So yeah, I was a big fan of him. Leading right into that is Venom, who I'm gonna say was the one I was probably the most excited for, and I think I was a little too excited for Venom. Venom's not bad, but I feel like he's solved. You figure him out kind of quick, in my opinion, because of how the bell tower system works, right? So the bell tower is the environment card. If there's at least 3 chime counters here, flip the card. When any amount of damage would be dealt to Venom by an attack, you may place that on the chime counters here instead. And on the other side, basically, you increase all damage Venom takes by 1. So you want to start hitting him when this side is up, right? And if there are no chime counters here, you flip the card to the other side. Force interrupt. When Venom attacks, or when Venom's attack would deal any amount of damage to an identity, remove that many chime counters from here. For each chime counter removed this way, prevent 1 of that damage. So basically, your general gist with Venom is you want to stack the bell tower with chime counters. And that's really just kind of how that works. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. It's that simple to explain. Now, don't get me wrong. When you play Venom on Expert, I've only done him a handful of times on Expert. He's tough, right? Retaliate's tough. He puts down more boost cards, which is kind of really tough. He can be really difficult. You really want to time out your chime counter as well. I felt like on Standard, though, he was really kind of easy once you figure that out. Right, he didn't put up too much of a challenge my first few playthroughs. I think I lost once or twice, and that's it. Again, I wanted a bit more, I guess. I really looked forward to Venom for a long time. And it's not that it's a bad, villain by any means. It felt a little flat to me. It felt like it was a little too easy to figure out. Sandman, again, was probably the same amount of difficulty of figuring out per se. But I would expect that on the first villain. For a second villain, I expected another extra layer, and I felt like it wasn't quite there. Now, again, I will say that Venom as an expert villain is better than Sandman as expert villain. I think there's an extra layer challenge. I think it's pretty difficult. So I was pretty happy with Venom overall. I was pretty happy with Venom as an expert villain. As a standard villain, I think he's a bit weak. Maybe I use him as a practice, maybe, but because of the gimmick with the chime counters, my strategy is always going to be kind of the same, so maybe not. And I think that's kind of a weird theme that we'll see in this box, is a lot of people talk about villains in which to test their deck on, right, to see how good their deck is, and I don't know if that's really going to be a thing anymore, because each villain they seem to be coming out with has a slightly different gimmick, or it's just very, very difficult. It's one of the two. And I think we're running out of test villains. I think you're getting to the point where you almost have to build a deck for a villain, and the campaign is that much difficult because you can't really switch aspects, generally speaking. So I think that's what we're going to see in these boxes moving forward, is once you kind of figure out the gimmick, it's how do you work around it, and you build a deck toward that gimmick. So it's one of those things where both these heroes aren't really ones I think I would have a test deck built against, and I'll just spoil that now. I think the entire box doesn't really have a test villain I would go against. Right now, I still think probably the best one is maybe Claw, maybe for a solo aspect, but that's a whole nother discussion we can get into another day. So without going on that too much, let's talk a bit about Mysterio. So Mysterio I thought was pretty interesting. I accidentally figured him out kind of fast. A rush strategy works really well against Mysterio. If you rush him and you don't have the time to go through your deck and really get to his cards, because it's when you draw his cards, right, it hurts you really bad. If you just rush through him as fast as possible, and because he doesn't have that many hit points, it's not that hard to rush him. Right, we're looking at a 15, 17, then 16, which is always interesting that they drop it down. But I get it, because the when revealed effect of the expert version of him is pretty hard. I mean, you got to discard 5 cards from your deck. It's a good amount. Mysterio, I think he's fine. Again, I fall back into the old strategy of I'm just going to rush him as fast as humanly possible and beat him that way. And that's kind of the way you want to do it. You don't want to build out against Mysterio. You rush him, beat him down. He doesn't really swing that hard, generally speaking. What makes him difficult is that all the encounter cards may be coming out, right? The encounter cards come out and they kind of mess with you. And that's what makes him difficult. But himself isn't that difficult of a villain, even on expert. He's not that bad. So Mysterio for a 3rd level boss. I mean, last time we had Thanos, which was a lot more difficult. So this is I think Mysterio is way easier than Thanos was, for comparing it to the last box, but he's not bad. I just think he was mediocre overall. Next up, we have the Sinister Six. So I know I've kind of talked down a lot of this box. Again, Sandman I think was good for a first villain. I thought Venom was a little disappointing, but he's fine. Mysterio is probably my biggest disappointment. Sinister Six to me turns this game around. I absolutely love this scenario. I like the whole idea of different amount of villains coming out, trying to deal with them, and I like that their hit points don't scale. And I've seen some people complain about this, that if you play a 2-player game, they should scale. But that's not the point, right? The point is not to just beat them and be done with them. They just keep coming back. And I think that's a really interesting decision that they made with this. I really like it. I've had some people comment to me that said that this is a really easy scenario, and they've absolutely crushed it repeatedly. I guess I haven't figured it out yet. I struggle. I struggle against this scenario. I think it's a good challenge, and it's always a balanced challenge, right? I never felt like I got cheated out of a win or anything like that. I felt like there was a certain point in the game I felt like I had to make a rush, and if I'd made it too soon, it kind of messed me up, and I didn't do great. But again, I never felt cheated. I never felt like I lost that way. To me, comparing this to the previous box of Hella, I still like Hella more because I like the way that scenario is set up, where you're kind of like questing through different things. But honestly, as a fourth scenario, I think this was really well done. I think it was a lot of fun. I still enjoy playing it. Like I said, I haven't quote unquote solved it yet. And I don't know if I really ever will. I've taken other people's advice on what to do, and I still struggle against this scenario. So I like it. I was a fan. The campaign version I think of is pretty rough, but overall I think it's a really good scenario. I honestly really personally enjoyed it. And then finally we have Venom Goblin, which is hard. I realized in my video it was pointed out to me that I was playing it wrong the very first time I played in the campaign. And I struggled against him then, and I was playing it wrong. I was making it easier. And I played it later on, and I will be honest, I attempted Venom Goblin once on Expert. I've beaten him once on Standard and played him a handful of times. And he's tough. I mean, he's tough. He's what I expect in the final, boss and expansion box. I want them to be difficult. I want it to be kind of hard, and I want my win percentage to be in the 20, maybe 30%. I want it to be low. So in that perspective, it does exactly what I would expect it to do. What I will say with Venom Goblin is, I know a lot of people were saying that he's the new hardest villain, and I think I kind of agree with that he might be the new hardest villain. But once again, it never felt cheated out of a win. Right, when I look back at Ronan, and everything gets compared to Ronan, right? Because that's what most people want to know. Is he as difficult as Ronan, or is Ronan worse, or is Venom Goblin worse? I still think Ronan is worse. I still think Ronan is worse because you just get some bad draws. You just get some really bad draws, and his cards are so over the top hard. Are Venom Goblin's cards hard? Yeah, they are. I'm not gonna say that they're not, and especially with what is it, Symbiotic Strength expansion box, right? Cards are hard too. But I never felt like I lost because just bad draws, right? Sure, it happened now and again. But Ronan always felt like no matter what you did when you lost, it's just you had to win in a round or two, maybe 3 if you timed it perfectly. And past that, you weren't going to win. There's no way. And Venom Goblin and I could get into a fight for a longer period of time. And sure, he was really tough, but I lasted several rounds, more than I've ever lasted against Ronan. Which I think for me always made it feel like it was more fair, right? There was a better opportunity of winning. I just have to get better. So I like Venom Goblin. Now, again, it's early on. Like I said, I played him once on Expert. On Standard, I play him a handful of times, like 6-7 times. So there's more I have to unpack with him, especially on Expert. But from where it is right now, generally speaking, the last villain in most boxes I don't play a ton because they usually are much more difficult. It's something I play when I really fine-tune the deck and I want to give it the ultimate challenge. To me, Venom Goblin fits that bill. I'm happy with him. So the last thing I'll say too is I want to talk about the Expert campaign the campaign as a whole. I liked it. I thought it was pretty good. I like the new tracking system, right? The different progress steps. I forgot what's called off the top of my head. I like that system. I'm happy they're doing something different. it's kind of interesting because there's a lot of importance on trying to, especially early on, get pretty far in those steps. I like that it's not all positive, right? There is a little bit of negative that happens there, which is interesting balance. I like it. Is it my favorite system? No, I'm still the biggest fan of anything was the market deck from Guardians box. I think did it. That's still the thing I enjoy the most out of all of them. But I like it. I'm happy they're willing to try different things and see what it's like, and I think that's cool. I thought as campaign cards go, there's tough cards. To be fair, when you unlock, slight spoiler, so stuff like that. When you unlock a Venom, it's kind of interesting how he works and works with you, and I think he makes certain parts a little bit easier. Nothing too bad though, right? But you look at the campaign cards. Smear campaign is rough. It's a rough card. Public outcry, kind of rough. It's kind of rough in campaign. And then community service. You pick a random card. I don't think they're that bad. Snitches get stitches. I never really got. I think I got once. And it wasn't great to get, but is what it is. And then the different upgrade cards that you could get, especially on the advanced side, or enhanced. I'm sorry, not advanced. Enhanced side. I thought they were good. I thought they were pretty balanced. I didn't think they were over the top powerful, which I guess is good. But yeah, I like I said, I think the cards were good. I think they were fine in the campaign. I think the campaign adds the right amount of difficulty. I wish the cards that would help you were a little bit better. I don't think they're bad, but I think they would help you a little bit more. And yeah, so overall, those are my general thoughts of the Sinister Motives boxes. Now, if I was purchasing this all today, what would I do? If I don't have any of these boxes, I'd probably still get Red Skull first, then probably this one, right? And then Thanos. Maybe Thanos and this, I think, are right next to each other. And if you ask me which ones are the best expansion boxes, from a hero perspective, this one, I think, is the best. As far as villains go, I think I still like Thanos box more, even though it's got two pretty hard villains in it. I really like Hela. I really like the Hela battle. I don't know. To me, they keep getting better. They keep getting more interesting and have more variety in it. So anyway, like I said, leave me a comment down below. Let me know where this falls in everything, and let me know your thoughts of it overall. Once again, I appreciate you taking the time to watching this video. Make sure to like and subscribe. Take care, all.